on Facebook has disappeared. Are you seeing it on your end?
But I don't have the option because I'm not an administrator on the main page.
All right, guys. We are now live streaming on Facebook. And I would like to welcome everybody and thank everyone for attending our webinar. I am Heather East and I am with the Marketing and Communications team, and I am going to be moderating and hosting. Just to let you know a little bit about ARH, Appalachian Regional Healthcare is a not-for-profit healthcare system operating 11 hospitals in southeastern Kentucky and 2 in West Virginia. ARH is the largest provider of care and single largest employer in southeastern Kentucky and the 3rd largest private employer in southeastern West Virginia. ARH operates multi-specialty physician practices, home health agencies, home medical equipment stores, and retail pharmacies. It is consistently recognized for its medical excellence. So, just to give you a little bit of housekeeping, we have already asked for our participants to mute unless they are talking. Our format today is going to be round robin, and each of our panelists are going to briefly share their COVID and vaccine story. This will be followed by questions and answers, and if you are watching live from our online broadcast, you can submit your questions in the comments. Your questions are welcomed and encouraged. However, our experts cannot provide specific medical advice or referrals during this webinar. Should you need a referral or have any questions about personal health, we encourage you to talk to your physician. And if you do not have a trusted physician, please visit arh.org where you can find a listing of our providers. So today, we have a panel of young people talking about their decision to get the COVID-19 vaccine. We are acknowledging the importance of our younger generation in developing herd immunity. Our panelists today are Dylan Baker, who is my colleague at ARH from Human Resources, and he will be joining us a little later. We have Jeff Akers, who is our Director of Pharmacy Services. We have Katie Brayman, who is a student here in Hazard, Kentucky. Haley Elkins, student from Beckley, West Virginia. We have Zach Hall, student from Whitesburg, Kentucky. We have Hannah Lemaster, breastfeeding mommy, who lives in Prestonsburg. She's my daughter. We have Cassie Marshall, and we have Jacob Rouse, who is a fellow ARH employee and recruiter at ARH. So let's get started. And we will start with Jeff Akers. Will you share your story?
Thank you, Heather. I appreciate being included in the young people assessment that were invited to this. I haven't called a young person in a long time. So I actually, as a corporate director of pharmacy, I was actually one of the first in ARH to get the COVID vaccine. I got the Moderna vaccine when we got it in mid-December. And first, as far as my decision to obtain the vaccine, you know, as a pharmacist, it just makes sense. Vaccines have a long history of doing much public good and preventing disease. Of all the interventions that we do with medications or vaccinations, vaccinations have, I would say, have done the most good to save lives. And so I think that for the pandemic that we have, vaccinations are absolutely the most scientifically proven and best possible benefit that you can do to avoid getting the disease. The first dose I got didn't have any adverse events from that. I actually told everyone that I was hoping to grow a 3rd arm. That would make me a lot more efficient in my job, but it didn't happen, so I was kind of disappointed by that. But I got the second dose 4 weeks later, and I got it on a Friday, and the next morning, I told my wife I felt like I'd been in Fight Club. So, I mean, I literally felt like I'd been beat to death. I mean, it's just a lot of myalgia. Lasted for about 12 hours, and then I was fine. So, and we can go into that later, but those kind of responses, those kind of what you might call an adverse event, that's actually your body's positive response to how vaccines work. So when you feel bad like that, that's actually a good sign. That tells you that you've got a good immune response to the vaccine. So glad to be here and be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Katie Brayman, would you like to go next?
Yeah, of course. I got the vaccine because, well, I actually got COVID at the beginning of this year, and it stopped me from being able to go to school for the short amount of time that we have had this year. And I really got the vaccine because I wanted to be able to have a somewhat normal end to my senior year of high school. And I want to be able to have a more normal summer this year than I was able to last year. And when I got it, it was painful. Like my arm, I did tell my friends that felt like it was gonna fall off. But the second dose I've heard is supposed to be a little worse, but it really wasn't too bad for me. Personally, it was about the same as the first dose, and I was able to get a lot of my friends to come get vaccinated. So my whole friend group, we were able to stay away from COVID for a long time from being a little pod. But yeah, now we're all vaccinated. Most of us are, at least. I'm fully vaccinated, and being around mom helped a lot, obviously. But yeah, I was a little worried at first to go get the vaccine, but the side effects really were not bad at all for me. They weren't bad for my parents either. So I'm just glad that I got it, and I'm glad that I'm able to get a little more normalcy back in my life.
Okay, before we move forward, Katie, you said that you were a little worried. I'm just going to ask you to expound on why you were worried.
Well, for me, it was really it was emergency FDA approved, and I wasn't sure how that worked entirely, but upon, getting a little more research into that and realizing that it's really like they go through a safe process to be able to approve that, it helped a lot being able to read through that. But yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, Haley, I think you're up next.
I'm Haley. I'm 15. I'm a freshman in high school, and I think even though I'm not old enough to get the vaccine, I think it's insanely important for other people to do so, because I have done everything in my power, because I can't get it. I've worn my mask. I've double masked, washed my hands. I use my hand sanitizer. I do what I can to make sure that I don't get it and I don't give it to other people. I could say that everything's been super easy for me because I was virtual for the first half of the year, but it hit me like a ton of bricks because I've never done virtual school and been out of like the whole flow of a school and a schedule. So my grades were really suffering because it was hard for me to focus and all. But I went back to school for the second semester. And as much as my mom told me there's so many kids at Woodrow, it's going to be overwhelming, I wasn't ready. I didn't get it until I got dismissed from my first period class, and there was just everyone flooding the hallway. And it put a pain in my chest because I was so nervous that I might get it or my friends might get it, because everyone is like packed like sardines in the hallways, in the lunchroom, in the classrooms. And like, there's nothing you can do about it. There's no way that we can give the school more space. And I definitely didn't get the high school experience, like football games, track meets, going to pep rallies. And I understand, but I hope that more people my age can get vaccinated, and so that we can maybe start having a little bit more normalcy, like Katie said. I was so, like, getting the vaccine's important to me because my mom, she's high risk. She has an autoimmune disorder, and me giving it, she's allergic to a lot of medicines, so me giving it to her could possibly hospitalize her and put her in like a horrible condition. And even she got the shot. So all of my respect goes out to her. And we were actually texting about it this morning because Raleigh County Schools sent her a survey for me to get my vaccine soon because it's getting approved. And I told her that I was so excited because I want to just be able to go like out and do stuff because we haven't been able to. And like get that bonding time back.
You're choking me up. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll talk more about the age and developments and studies a little bit later. So is there anything else you want to add, Haley?
Not really. I'm just really excited to be here.
Okay. All right. Zach, could you tell us your story?
Hey everyone, I'm Zach. I'm 17 and a rising senior at Letcher County Central High School. The main thing that comes to mind when I went to go get my vaccine is that I've seen what COVID can do on the worst level for someone. My mother, she works for the school district and she works with special education. And she was one of the very few people who still had to go in and like do home visits during the midst of like when it was like really bad, like back this past fall, and she caught COVID. And since then, she's been to the lung doctor and she's been diagnosed with stage 2 emphysema because of COVID. And she used to be outside. She would run around all the time. She would cut grass. And now she can't even walk down the street without getting winded anymore. It's like, you can like see how scared she is because of the after effects of what COVID's done to her. And that's what people don't get. They think, oh yeah, you have it for like 2 weeks and then it's over. But we don't know enough about it to know like how long it goes on for. And with my mom, I've seen really like what the aftershock of that can do to someone. And on top of that, my grandparents, they're both elderly and they've been scared to death of this like forever. Thankfully, they're both fully vaccinated and my mom is fully vaccinated now. And I was fully vaccinated in March and into middle of April. The main reason that I want to get my fellow students and people in my age group to do it is that I want to go back to a sense of normality that we've not had for over a year. I want to be able to go back to school like many other people. I was virtual for a very long time. I want to be able to work as a lifeguard this summer. That's always my favorite thing to do in the summer, and COVID completely took that away from me last year. And where I'm a senior, everyone needs to do it because when I go off to college, I don't want to be in a big city and put myself at even more risk than I would have here in Letcher County. When I got my vaccine, my first and my second dose, I got Pfizer over in Pikeville. I was in and out in like 20 minutes and it was completely free. I had my insurance card and my driver's license. That's all I had to bring to them. But I played a tennis match after both times that I got the dose, and I got it in my dominant arm. So I had to serve tennis balls like right after I got my shot. And I feel like if I can do that and still not like have my arm fall off from this vaccine, then I feel like a lot of people can go and get that. You'll be fine.
Awesome, Zach. That was very well spoken. All right. I think we have Hannah and Brinley up next. And just FYI for everybody, that's my grandbaby. That's my daughter.
Hi, I'm Hannah Lemaster. I live in Prestonsburg. This is my daughter, Brinley. My story, I wanted to get the vaccine from the time that it really came out. I had concerns on mainly where I'm still breastfeeding. I was worried that it was going to drop my supply, and as a breastfeeding mother, that is a huge worry, is that you're going to drop your supply. You're not going to be able to provide for your child anymore. So I was worried about that. I was worried that I was going to pass it to her and her possibly have an allergy to it. But my supply did not drop. I did not pass anything to her. Neither one of us had any type of reaction. What really convinced me to do it, I talked to her pediatrician, Dr. Haas, and Dr. Haas said, absolutely, go ahead and get it. Do what you can to protect that baby, to protect your family. So her push and talking to a few other doctors with ARH really convinced me. I wanted to protect her. I wanted to protect my family, wanted to protect my husband's family. My husband has a grandmother who is in her 80s, and my daughter's with her every day. So I definitely wanted to make sure that everybody in the family was completely protected. I still have family that has not met my daughter over the span of this 1 year that we've had her in this life. Luckily, we're going to have a few family members that have not got to get to meet her this weekend, but hopefully as more people take the vaccine and get this herd immunity going, more family, more friends, everybody will be able to meet her and she'll be able to have a normal life, I hope. I hope that by the time that she's in school, we're not having to do this virtual stuff. I would suck at it. But I didn't really have any reactions. I had a sore arm on the first dose. On the second dose, I had a little bit of body aches that evening and a little bit of fatigue the next day. But other than that, everything was fine and dandy.
Great. Well, I was about to ask you a question and then you went ahead and answered it for me. So good job. Dr. Marshall, Cassie, will you jump in next?
Hello, I want to say thank you to ARH for hosting this and for inviting me to come, and all these truly young people that are brave enough to do the right thing and to step in and then to encourage other people. So it's really encouraging to someone that's not so young anymore to see such awesome, great young people that are being leaders and examples and caring about older individuals and people that are immunocompromised. So thank you. When I was contacted about sharing my story, I was like, mine's a little bit different, but I'm going to go ahead and just tell you because I know a lot of people have missed out on a lot of things over the past year. So we were watching and staying really up to date on this as soon as we heard about it in China, because my family and I were supposed to go to Japan last March. And so we were really, really, really watching this from a distance, thinking, okay, so obviously we didn't get to go. And now that seems very frivolous, that was even a concern. But it was. We planned for a long time. A friend of ours was working over there. It was a great time to go. They were going to be coming home soon. So we felt like this was the right time. So obviously that was a disappointment. Again, minor in the grand scheme of things now. The other interesting thing is my husband and I became travel agents in January of last year, more as a hobby, probably more than just another job. So you can't go to Tokyo. You not a good time to start being a travel agent when everybody's on lockdown. And then we did go somewhere over spring break, and on the way back, we heard it announced that where we had been was actually closing in just a couple of days. And we also learned that our children were going to finish the year virtually. So we're like, wow, this really is real. It's hitting home now. This is what we were afraid of as we've been watching this. And I remember on the way home, we decided we better stop and just try to get supplies. And literally, I think we stopped in several different states before we could get what we felt like we needed, because all of a sudden there was this rush. And then we get home, and like I said, our children, we have 3 children, they had to finish school online. And I love my job. I'm an internal medicine physician. I work at ARH, Our Lady of the Way. And I love my job, but it's very stressful and difficult at times. But one of the most difficult things that I do is when I leave my family in their home. I hate having to do that. And that's what I had to do for a long time. So, so many people were furloughed, laid off, lost their jobs altogether. So while I was very fortunate and I felt blessed that I still had a job, I didn't like having to leave my family. I felt like they were safe here at home and that I was going. And then if my family contracted this, it was going to be my fault because my line of work, I was exposed. And not only did I have to go to work, but I was having to work a different schedule. So because of furloughs, it was myself, one other physician, and a nurse practitioner that covered the hospital and clinics. And so it went to where I didn't have my day off. I didn't have my time with my kids. They're trying to do virtual school from home. My husband is working from home and trying to help our kids. And it was just an extremely stressful time. And I missed that time being able to stay home with them. And like so many other people, we didn't see our parents for a couple of months. And even then it was outside at a distance. So just so many things. And then, nightmare happens. I also see patients, residents at the Knott County Health and Rehabilitation Center. And they are an extended family to me. I adore them. A huge part of what I do. And it made its way into there. And that was really heartbreaking. I know everyone's heard the horror stories of long-term care facilities and the impact that it had. But here were residents that were away from their families. Really, they tried to set up booths outside that were safe. I didn't go in for about a year. Back inside the building, we did virtual visits. I did a window visit. And I remember one day in particular, when I was there outside doing virtual visits from the window, doing window visits, I remember there were chairs outside some of the rooms. And it hit me really hard. I thought, here's our families, they're dedicated, they're coming and sitting outside. And as sad as that was, I noticed all the windows that didn't have chairs outside. So here were people that were isolated inside, staff that was sacrificing so much. These people were getting sick. They couldn't be around their families. Unfortunately, some of them had to die alone. And it was horrible to see that happen and truly have no control whatsoever. And so, a vaccine sounded fabulous. And as we had been hit by it in so many different ways, you would think, well, she would really, really want it. But at first I thought, I don't know, because, like I said, I was working hard, I was extra stressed, and I was getting a lot of my information, false information from social media and the news. And I was like, I'm just going to wait. I've made it this long. Thankfully I have PPE to wear. I'm going to wait a little bit. And in that, as it got closer and we think we're going to get them, I thought, Cassie, you really need to educate yourself more on this. There's a lot more to it than what we're hearing, and you need to slow down and really educate yourself and pray about it. My faith is very important to me. And I did those things, and it was a very, very, from that point on, easy decision for me, because I thought, well, I'll wait. And I know other people thought, well, we'll wait and see what happens. And but, if I'm going to wait for long-term data, I'm looking at 5 or 10 years down the road. I don't know what's going to happen between now and then, but I definitely know what COVID can do to people and to families, to our children. And I was like, wow, I want to set a good example, and I want my children to be safe. I want them to be able to go back to school. I want the residents at long-term care facilities, I want them to be able to have their families. I mean, there's people celebrating milestone birthdays, 105 years old with their staff, their family there, but their family can't be there. And all those reasons just made it very, very obvious. Again, once I took time and educated myself with accurate information, I was so excited. If I could have been the first one to get it, I would have. I was one of the first ones. I was able to get it toward the end of December, my first shot. And I did fine with both of mine. I felt like I had a little cold for the first one. The second one I was dreading. And within a few hours, I started feeling the same way I did with the first one. And I was working at the office that day. I didn't have time to be sick. So I took some leave. That night I went home. I felt exhausted, like I could not move. And the next morning I woke up and I was fine. My husband was able to get, and I got Pfizer. I would have gotten Moderna. I was ready to get whichever one I could get first. So I got Pfizer. My husband got Moderna through his employer. And he did, minus the sore arm, really well with the first one. The second one, he did run a fever for about 36 hours. Felt really, really badly. He ran a high fever, actually, over 102. But that was a glimpse of, okay, this is a small dose of it. What if he really would have gotten COVID? And so that just, again, kind of confirmed this is the right thing to do. And I know a lot of people have had people that passed, have loved ones, we've missed things. But my husband's aunt and uncle contracted COVID, and unfortunately his uncle passed from complications. It was a couple months ago, but he was in and out of the hospital several times. And ultimately we just had his funeral this past Sunday. And so when you see that hit home and all the aspects of life, see people missing out on things, and again, get the correct information, I think that will help us all make our decisions to do the right thing and really try to set examples and show others that we care. And we want this to be over with. I mean, I'm still planning on going to Tokyo, hoping to go to Tokyo at some point. And I've enjoyed getting to go back to the nursing home because we're vaccinated. And so hopefully this can help answer some questions. And again, it's so encouraging to see all you young people on board and doing the right thing and trying to encourage other people to do it. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Cassie. Wow, what a story. Jacob?
I always have a story. I have a story for everything.
That is not a bad thing. Jacob, tell us your story.
Hello, my name is Jacob Rouse. I work for ARH as well. I got my vaccine as soon as Dylan, which is actually my boss, he came in and said, do you want to get the vaccine? And I said, yes, I will go right now if that's when I can get it. I got mine. I was, like Dr. Marshall said, I was one of the early ones to get it in December. I'm very thankful for ARH taking care of the employees and just providing that for us. We had actually talked, all the HR team here, we was talking one day, like the week before, and I said, if somebody would call me right now and said, you have to drive 10 hours to get this, I would have gotten in the car and started driving to get it. I had the Moderna vaccine, and my first dose, I was okay. I didn't get sick or anything. I had a sore arm for a little bit, and then that's it. Then my second dose, I really did think my arm was going to fall off. It was really sore, and I mean, it was nothing unbearable. I mean, I took some Aleve and just toughened it out because I'd rather have a sore arm than to actually get COVID. I was just really sluggish and tired, and the best thing for me to do was just to rest. I just felt kind of bad, and I took a day off work and stayed home and rested, and I was completely fine the next morning. I got the vaccine not only to protect myself, but to protect my family. And something Dr. Marshall said, which really hit home for me, was about being terrified, bringing it home from work, taking it home to your family. I have 2 grandparents left. Both of them have COPD, underlying health conditions. Their lungs are not in good shape. I have an aunt who has a rare genetic disorder. And I am just a big family person. I love my family. I love to see my family a lot. My grandpa, I mean, he's 77 years old, and I still go stay all night with him a couple nights throughout the week. And when COVID hit, I was so terrified to go see him just because of everything. I was so unsure about, you know, if I'm carrying this, or like, I'm in and out of the hospitals all the time. And I was terrified to go to the hospital and work for 8 hours and then go over and visit, just because that unknown, like I didn't want to carry anything in, and that absolutely killed me. I hated that. I hated not being with my family. I also have underlying health conditions, one of those being asthma. I would say all the time, I don't know if I have asthma or if I have COVID, because I'm one of those people who have never got to outgrow asthma. I mean, a lot of people, you know, it outgrows and, you know, it's not as bad, but I'm 23 years old and it's still bad as it was when I was a kid. So I was very scared, honestly, about getting it. I mean, I have took all the measurements to try to protect myself, protect my family. One thing about I really wanted to get it was not just family, but I am in the healthcare field. I am in and out of the hospitals, and I wanted to make sure that I was doing my part to protect other people's families and other people's loved ones when I was going in and out of the hospitals. Because there's no way to avoid that contact with people when you're in a hospital. I mean, you're always going to be around people, and I just wanted to make sure that I was not carrying anything to the staff. I'm not really around patients, but I didn't want to carry anything to the staff and our leadership and our nurses, the doctors who was taking care of these patients. So that's the main reasons I got it. I just think it's very important for us to all do it to just protect each other and to get that herd immunity. I would encourage everyone to get it. You know, Zach cracked me up. You know, he went to a tennis game, the kid hit the tennis ball. I mean, I couldn't have done that, but if somebody can hit a tennis ball with that after getting the shot and getting that second dose and everything, I promise it is not that bad. But yeah, I think one just big, huge thing for all of us is we want to get back to the normalcy. I've went through 2 jobs before I started working at ARH. I actually switched jobs in the middle of the pandemic and came to ARH to work. And I've actually got the privilege to help with the vaccine clinic a lot here at the System Center in Hazard, where we give the vaccines. And it just makes me so happy. I'm wore out by the end of the day when I have to help, but it makes me so happy when we have 150, 200, 250 people coming and getting vaccines. And then they say, well, I know somebody who needs a vaccine. And I mean, I just love working for ARH because we can say, okay, tell them to come right now and we'll give them the vaccine. Half the time when I walk outside the office here, there's somebody there like, are they giving vaccines today? I had to go out to my car a while ago and there's actually people out there that ask, hey, can I get the vaccine? And but I do encourage anybody that has not got it to get it, because just to protect each other and to get back to that normal life that we knew before this happened.
Thank you so much, Jacob. So I've heard a lot of people talk about the side effects. And then Katie, you said that you had COVID. So how would you compare having COVID to getting the vaccine? And have you had any other friends, and don't mention anybody by name if you do, but you know, can you tell us what you have witnessed yourself and maybe even from friends in that respect?
Yeah, the side effects like I said, didn't hit me that hard. My symptoms with COVID were odd. So I had one day I would have a sore throat and a cough, and then the next day I'd have stomach pains, and then the next day I'd feel perfectly fine. So, but I have heard that it is much worse the second time around when you get COVID. So I definitely didn't want to do that. But I've seen other people that got the vaccine get a little bit sick from it, but it has been nothing compared to what I've seen with people getting COVID and with my own experience with COVID.
Got it. So Jeff, you touched on this just a little bit. Perhaps you can tell us, or even Cassie, whoever wants to answer this, what do these side effects that we're experiencing after we get the vaccine, what do they tell us?
I'll take a first stab, and Dr. Marshall, you can tell me how wrong I am. So, but basically, just to kind of give you an update, the way these vaccines work is that they use what's called messenger RNA. So it's not DNA, it's a single strand of messenger RNA. And what it does is when you're injected with it, it codes for the body to start producing what's called a spike protein. And so it's a protein that's on the spike protein of the COVID virus. So you don't you actually don't take the virus. It's not a killed virus. It's not a weakened virus. It's not. It's just a part of RNA that directs your body to produce a particular protein. So your body, once it recognizes that, is it starts to mount an immune response. Okay, and so what happens is, and when you get sick, I mean, a lot of times you'll run a fever, have inflammation, so that's your soreness. You may just have different kind of symptoms. I mean, a lot of times you'll have pain at what's called pain at the injection site. So you have pain where you get the shot. And I had a mentor tell me one time, you know what, shots hurt. So that's not surprising. So, but basically what happens is when you have those adverse events, that's your body telling you that it's responding to the production of the spike protein and generating antibodies to ramp up to fight, if you're infected later. And that's how vaccines work is that they kind of fool your bodies to start producing those antibodies against the actual disease. And so what the messenger RNA, again, is not the virus. You can't get COVID from a vaccine, but it starts your body's internal immune processes to start generating those antibodies to prepare you to fight if you were exposed to COVID.
Thank you. And are there any differences in the side effects between adults and young people?
Most it's kind of funny because early on in the data, when the data started coming out before the vaccines were released, most of the side effects were actually, and again, Pfizer is down to 16, is authorized down to 16, Moderna is authorized down to 18, and the Janssen vaccine is down to 18 as well. But most of the side effects early on were actually seen in younger patients. And that usually it's opposite. Usually you see more adverse events in older patients because they have, comorbidity, different diseases or different drugs or things like that. And the thought is the reason why sometimes you see more side effects these effects in younger patients is that they have a stronger immune response. And so an older patient is typically what we would call a little immunosuppressed, and so their immune system doesn't respond to the extent or as quickly as a younger person might. So a younger person taking a vaccine, sometimes they have a little bit more intense adverse effects. But again, that's your body telling you that it's a positive response, and that's what you want. So, and I want to reiterate, the adverse events seen, the side effects seen with the vaccines are mild in comparison to the actual disease. I mean, again, you can't get COVID from the vaccine, and when you take the vaccine and you have those effects, they're always very transient. Typically, vast majority of the time, less than 24 hours, and you don't have long-term effects. With COVID, you can have COVID, you can be exposed to positive COVID for weeks and months. I know of one patient who was positive for months. A couple or 3 months, and we're still finding out more and more information about what's been termed long COVID, is the adverse effects of like neurological adverse effects of COVID disease, where people can't taste well, can't smell well, have problems breathing, which is more pulmonary effect, but have problems walking even. So there's a lot of adverse effects that are associated with COVID that can potentially be long lasting, whereas the vaccine is very short.
Thank you. All right, so this question goes out to our panelists. How would you rate the supportiveness of your friends and family in your decision to get the vaccine? And after you got your vaccine, do you think that changed any? Did you influence them in any way?
I'll say I had a great amount of support. I remember how excited I was when I got mine to notify my mother, my husband, my in-laws, and they were just so excited. And I remember one of the first things my mother-in-law, she said, "Oh, I'm so happy." I texted and I sent her a picture and she said, "Which one did you get?" And I said, I don't know. Like, I would have taken either one of them. I'm just so happy. So I literally had to look on my paperwork to see which one I got. And so I was like, oh, I got this one. And then I will say, just being with patients, a lot of them say, well, are you going to get it? Or did you get it? And, it's hard for me to encourage patients to do that if I'm not willing to myself. And so I definitely think that that's helped encourage some people to go ahead and feel like, okay, it must be safe. It must be okay. Because they like to know someone that's already gone through it.
Right. Zach, you want to go? You want to answer?
Yeah, sure. So I feel like it really varies going from group to group. My friend group, some of them were very supportive and some of them weren't. My family, though, were very supportive because like they really wanted me to get it because of all the things that happened with my mom and how my grandparents are scared about it and how my sister, she's 12, and like how would she be affected by it. But I like remember my Nana, she sent me the notification when CNN posted that people 16 and older could get it, because I was 16 at the time, and I got mine right before I turned 17. But my friend group, and as much as I hate to say it, it really, their view on it shifted over how, like, what political party they were affiliated with. I know that like my friends who were more liberal, they were all for it, and they were like, yeah, what's the information, where can I go to get this vaccine? And then some of my friends who are more conservative said, you should have just waited for it to blow over. You don't know what they're putting in you. You don't know what those vaccines are going to do. You're probably infertile now. And like, that's what we see here is we have a group of people who focus on the negatives and a group of people who focus on the positives. And it all comes down to, what can you do right now to protect your community? We can worry about the side effects and stuff later on down the road. If I'm going to grow a third arm, then so be it. It kept someone else from dying. That's what I'm worried about, is just helping people right now as it is.
Okay. Katie, Hannah,
Heather, can I interject just for a second? And I just want to give Zach, since you have that problem, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have that same problem, something that you can always do, and this is what I've told my younger siblings, is if you see that misinformation and you have people come to you with misinformation, ask them to look up some things that are not on Facebook or not on social media. So John Hopkins, CDC. If they don't trust the CDC, then look at other countries, their CDC, because we're all saying the same things. And people that are on Facebook can't be held accountable, or not held accountable for the things they say, and they can say anything, and then thousands of people share it and then they believe it. So please make sure, to ask people to actually do their research. And that's all.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that too. I think it's interesting. People say you don't know what they put in the vaccine. Well, if you go to the CDC or FDA's website and you pull up the little fact sheet, it'll tell you exactly what's in each vaccine, because by law they have to provide that. So you could go talk more about that, but I don't need to. But as far as knowing that kind of misinformation out there, I agree, Danielle. I think the amount of information, the amount of transparency with these products is probably the greatest I've ever seen when it comes to vaccine releases.
I would echo that as well. All right. Hannah,
go ahead.
I was just going to ask for some of our other speakers to talk about any barriers or rating their supportiveness in getting the vaccine from their peers.
I had kind of mixed support. I had a lot of family supporting me. I've had friends when I've told them I've received the vaccine, or when I told them I was thinking about receiving the vaccine, question why I did it. And after telling them I'm doing it to protect my family, to protect my community, and giving them a few of these facts, they start to understand it. But support really has been two different ends of the spectrum. I've had immense support, praises for getting it, but then I've also had it's stupid. It was created in under a year, and there's been vaccines that have been around, or there's been diseases that have been around for years and years, and they don't have vaccines or anything for these. But this disease that pops up out of nowhere, they all of a sudden have a vaccine, and I have to explain to them that this vaccine has been around for many, many years. It was just targeted towards this actual disease more so than other ones.
So, and I'd like to add to that too, if you don't mind, because I think that's a good point, because people say, you know, how did they get this out so quickly when it takes years and years and years? So let me explain two things. One is the mechanism, the messenger RNA vaccine, that technology has been out for a long time. Okay. I mean, it's been researched for a long time. So that's not new technology. Both Pfizer and Moderna use a messenger RNA vaccine. The Janssen and the AstraZeneca product, which isn't authorized yet in the States, use what's called adenovirus viral vector. So it's a little bit different mechanism, but actually does the same thing. So the same thing, that technology has been known for years. The second thing is, when you do drug studies, the FDA does drug studies, the way they typically do them is you do what's called a phase 1 study, then you do a phase 2 study, and then you do a phase 3 study. And they have different objectives. So phase 1 studies look at safety. Phase 2 studies kind of look at, well, what kind of doses can we give to see if they work and to be safe. And then the phase 3 studies are really, do they really work? Can we show in a larger population that these drugs or vaccines will work? And you typically, again, you do them phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. With this, obviously, because of the desire to get the vaccines out so quickly with the global pandemic and hundreds of thousands of people dying, what happened was the phases were actually stacked. And so what they did is, as the phase 1 study was starting, they were already planning the phase 2 study. And so as it was winding down, they had already started the phase 2. And then as it was winding down, they'd already started phase 3 studies. And so when people say, well, you know, they did it so fast, they cut corners, we don't really know, you know, that's actually not true. And in fact, I didn't look up the numbers, but I mean, the probably by now hundreds of millions of people who've gotten doses, I mean, especially with Pfizer and Moderna, we've had no real reports of, besides allergies, real serious adverse events. And that's really, and you say, well, they just don't report them. But actually, with the Janssen vaccine, out of 7 million people, there were 6 reports of what is called the thrombosis with thrombocytopenia. You probably heard the news when they put a hold on it. 6 people had reported out of 7 million, and they acted on it. And that just shows you how closely those adverse event monitors were occurring, and how deeply they were occurring, and how closely they were being monitored. So to say that we don't know what the adverse events are is just wrong. I mean, we know what that is. We have enough data now and enough experience that, mentioned the infertility and lactation. I mean, there's a lot of good data now that supports it. Even in the first Pfizer studies, they were giving it to a small group of pregnant women, and there's been no reports of any adverse events in those groups. So again, the response of we don't know is just wrong. We do know what the adverse events are.
If you don't mind, I was going to follow up on that a little bit too, because that's, and Hannah gave a really good segue to that, because I tried to jump ahead of it. But I think that some of the misconceptions were about the mRNA. And so, including myself, you see it on Facebook, you see it on the media. Well, is this going to make me infertile? It has to do with my DNA. Like, how do I know that's not going to change my cells around? And so, just a little bit, mRNA is, it dates back to like 2005, and they started looking at the technology of it. And coronaviruses, there's several different strains, and so we know a lot about them. And so some of the reasons that this was able to come about so quickly is because of these other coronaviruses. Also, SARS and MERS that we remember a few years ago are from the same family. So they knew about this spike protein, and it was something. And so you think, okay, why? So the mRNA is very fragile. Once it does what it's supposed to do, it just dissolves. And our DNA is kept in our nucleus of our cell, and the mRNA never enters the nucleus. So there's no chance whatsoever that it's going to mix with your DNA, as reports all across social media scared people into that. And it's easy to believe that because you hear, well, it's genetic, it's different, but it does not interact with the DNA at all. And like I said, once it goes across the ribosomes part, it makes the proteins. And once it does that, it just falls apart. That's one of the reasons that, you know, it has been hard, and they've been looking at it for so long. And that's why it required such cold temperatures, because it can be very unstable. And then the other safety with it is, and why they could go ahead, it wasn't that they cut corners, but usually when vaccines come about, it's one company, this country, and it's a funding issue. Whereas here we had government funding, we had just personal funding. And so that was there. And also countries were sharing their data about it. And then the other thing with this, they didn't have to grow. So a lot of vaccines are attenuated viruses where they've changed a little bit. And so they have to allow that time to grow and more in the lab. Whereas this, once they got the sequence for that, which they were able to get fairly quickly from China. And again, other countries shared the data. And one of the reasons that the phase trials that Jeff mentioned were able to happen so quickly is because they had so many people that were ready to jump in and volunteer to be in on it too, because they realized the importance. So just a word, you know, it doesn't mean that there were corners that were cut, and it means that a lot of the red tape that we have to go through, a lot of time people realize the importance of making this available. And it is quite remarkable that they were able to do it in such a short amount of time, but they did not in any way jeopardize our safety in doing that. It was just a global effort for a lot of different people and a lot of different reasons.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to try to wrap it up, but I do have a couple of important things that I want for Jeff and Cassie to address very quickly. And then I have one final question for all of our panelists. So quickly, if Cassie and Jeff, if you can tell us about the advances that are being made for the vaccine for people who are under age 16. And if you can also tell us, like, at what population percentage do we achieve this thing called herd immunity? And how are young people in this generation such a big part of reaching that?
And Dr. Marshall, I'll give an update on the vaccines, if that's okay. I'll start with that. But so Pfizer has already petitioned the FDA to get authorization for their vaccine down to age 12, and we anticipate that actually occurring next week. And so that's going to be pretty quickly. Moderna, the other vaccine manufacturer, has I think just this week petitioned the FDA for their vaccine, and we anticipate that being authorized probably early June. It might be late May, but it's probably going to be early June. The studies are already going on for, and this is going back to study design, and what they're called phase 2B studies, and they're basically dose ranging trials. And what they do for patients from 6 months of age to 12, okay, so the next age group down, they're doing these dose ranging trials where they're giving all patients either for Pfizer, it's the adult dose and the dose for the 12 to 15-year-old will be the same 30 microgram dose, 2 dose spread 3 weeks apart. They're giving a 10 mic dose, a 20 mic dose, and a 30 mic dose. So they're trying to see what the adverse events look like with each one of those doses. And then determine, you know, if you can give a lower dose and have the same outcome, positive outcome in terms of efficacy, then you want to give a lower dose. So that's doing that. Moderna is doing the same study for 6 months to 12 years of age. They're giving a 25 mic, a 50 mic, and a 100 microgram dose spread 4 weeks apart. So the big news is that as for the 12 to 15-year-old, Pfizer will likely be authorized next week. So again, I think one of our panelists is 15, and she said, you know, can't wait. Well, next week's your week, so you know it should be available. Go find all of our hospitals have Pfizer doses, and and get vaccinated.
As far as herd immunity, I know we've heard a lot about that. So a lot of people realize it's basically an indirect protection that we gain when we have a certain percentage of the population that are vaccinated. In how high that percentage has to be really depends on the R naught, and I know everybody's kind of heard of that. And basically, that's how quickly you can spread a disease to someone else. So the estimate is somewhere around 80%, so 70 to 90%, which is a big range there. And one of the reasons it's so important to go ahead and say, well, why don't we just wait for natural immunity? Natural immunity is better, and it's actually not better. If you have natural immunity, that's great, but it isn't better than vaccine. In fact, I would argue vaccine's better because you haven't had to go through such a serious illness to get those antibodies. And so it's really important because as all viruses, or maybe not all, but most, they mutate, and we see that with the seasonal flu. And the same thing, we're seeing all these variants. So the faster that we can get our numbers up, that is going to give us greater protection, and that the vaccine actually works better, so that we're on top of it and we beat the virus before it can mutate so much. And so young people are a huge part of that, because it really helps. Again, as some of people we've mentioned, there's immunocompromised, even infants, babies. So all kinds of things, reasons that you're immunosuppressed, and maybe you don't get the response to the vaccine like someone, as we mentioned, younger might. So it's really important for the young people to step in and do that too, because the faster we get to that, they're estimating about 80%, that's going to be our best chance of having herd immunity, which again is like an indirect protection for those people that for whatever reason couldn't get it, didn't get it, it didn't have the immune response that they should have. Right now, the last numbers that I saw, we are only about 33% fully vaccinated for the United States, and around 45% that have at least one vaccine. So we really have a ways to go. And hopefully when they open this up to the younger population, that will help us and really help get us to the herd immunity that we're also anxious for.
And I'll even jump in.
And I would just add to that one thing too. The recommendation is even, and just to add to Dr. Marshall's comments, because she's spot on, is that even if you've had COVID, the recommendation is you get vaccinated, because there is good data to show that the immune response to the vaccine is actually greater than the immune response to having the disease. And so even if you, I have a number of friends and colleagues who've had COVID and have gotten the vaccine, and that's what the recommendation is.
Yes, and I recommend for my patients, and like I mentioned, some of our family, that they should get the vaccine when they can, even if they've had COVID.
And I will also add that I saw some data that said about 23% of our population in the United States is under 18. So that means if 100% of all adults get it, there's still a large part of the population that is not helping us get to that because we don't have that vaccine yet. Okay, so my final question, and I want to round robin with everybody, and I'm going to start with Miss Haley on this, is what is that one thing you're looking forward to with normal life and being vaccinated?
Oh my gosh, I was so excited for this. Okay, so before the pandemic started, I would go to MacArthur skating rink every Friday night to go see my friends, to roller skate and have fun. And I cannot wait to go back and see them.
All right. Katie, you're next.
I'm really excited to be able to go to concerts again. I know it might be a while before that opens up, but I'm very excited to be able to do that because it's so fun.
Jacob.
I was muted, sorry. Mine is probably to get back out and travel and be around people. I know I still went on vacation, and just being out in the hot sun with mask and everything just wasn't it. But I can't wait to get back out and travel and just get out and about.
All right, Hannah.
I would probably say, once we decide to have more kids, actually be able to have a better birthing experience. I did not get to have the birthing experience I wanted. I was only allowed to have my husband there. We were not allowed to leave the hospital at all. I wanted to have my mother there, and she didn't get to be there. She had to be there over FaceTime, and that was really hard for me, for her, for all of us. So I'd say just being able to be around each other, be able to be in that type of setting to where we're not having to worry about who can come in, who can't come in, if we can leave, if we can't leave, things like that. So, yeah.
All right, Zach, you're next.
Mine would have to be holidays. Just seeing everyone together again. That's a traditional Eastern Kentucky value that COVID really stripped away from us, and I'm really happy to see that come back.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, I guess we should ask Cassie and Jeff. What is it you're most looking forward to?
I mean, I don't have any plans to go to Japan, but for me, I went to Israel about 5 months before COVID hit, and I would really like to go to Greece, and so Greece is kind of my Japan. I'd like to go to Japan too, Cassie. So, but Greece is kind of besides Greece and Israel, I've got one down that's on the bucket list. So we'd definitely like to go to Greece. So I'm excited about that.
All right, Cassie, is it that trip to Japan?
I'm looking forward to that. But I think just to be able to hug people when there's so many people hurting right now, so many people alone, and I see it every day, especially our young people. A lot of hurt, and people are looking for other things that they're not getting right now. So I'm really anxious and excited that when somebody's hurting, that you don't have to feel bad or scare them to give them a hug or to hold their hand, or to be able to pull my mask off and pull the gown off and just be a person and just sit there and talk to them.
Yeah. And I'm with a lot of these other people who mentioned travel. I am really looking forward to travel and beaches and big family gatherings. So, yeah.
Remember,
all right,
I can help with that too.
I'll try to remember that. I will, absolutely. All right, I want to thank each and every one of our panelists for their time, and I want to thank those of you who have watched, and I hope that you have learned and listened and felt the way I have as I've listened to all of these stories. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Take care.